On this edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose, the cloud challenge coming for the Pentagon could apply to everything.
We can't take years and years and years to let a contract to buy future-looking technology. That's what's really hard, because you're buying what's in the contract. You're not buying what you think you want now.
Former Pentagon Deputy CIO Rob Carey on FedGov Today in just a moment. First, though, one DOT-IT is the goal for the Transportation Department's Chief Information Officer. He lists processes, people, and products as part of the path to get to that goal. Pavan Padugu, the Chief Information Officer at DOT, will tell you about it on the last FedGov Today TV we recorded before the shutdown. You can watch the show on the FedGov Today YouTube channel anytime, and it's available on our website at fedgovtoday.com. A 5-phase life cycle and 10 foundational tenets make up the Pentagon's new cybersecurity risk management construct. Katie Arrington, performing the duties of the Pentagon Chief Information Officer, says the construct is a, quote, cultural shift in how the department approaches cybersecurity. Rob Carey is former Chief Information Officer of the Navy and former Principal Deputy CIO of the Department of Defense. Rob, welcome. It's great to talk to you again. You said before we turned the recorder on, no way to go from complexity to simplicity. Why did you use that terminology to frame the changes in the cyber risk management framework in the department? Welcome, Rob.
Thanks for having me, Francis. It is amazing the level of details that go into an assessment of a system and validating that it meets a standard to successfully run on a DoD network or any government agency network. So it has gone from relatively simple to highly complex. And so it's taking a long time to clear systems, right? It always has, but there's no real way to speed this up without going into the levels of detail that are necessary. The bad guys, continue to refine their skills in a way that is eye-watering to the defenders. And so, I think you have to manage the complexity maybe a little bit better. I know AI can play in that, but at the same time, AI is still a nascent capability in cybersecurity in the federal government. So it should be taken with, how can I continue to ensure that I am reasonably secure, right? And then what is, that word, what does reasonably mean, right? And then, of course, at the end of the day, I think you and I have talked about this a couple times. How much money am I willing to spend on that adventure, right? On stating and validating and maintaining a level of security that is consistent with the standards of protection and affordability. That's where it gets complex again, right? Because we do not treat all systems like they were classified or highly classified. We don't. We treat them accordingly. And of course, now we spend a lot of money on them. There's a lot of data on them. So the complexity to simplicity is really hard shift to make. So I think that the process that's undergone, the more it can be automated, the more it does simplify itself. But there is still a level of detail that must be checked for these systems.
You said AI is still a nascent technology regarding cybersecurity. What's the delta between where it is now and where AI can be a mature technology that's really a very useful tool for cyber practitioners?
Well, it's showing its benefit and its value in many use cases. Within technologies that are complex like cybersecurity, you've got to teach it, right? You've got to teach the model to perform to a level that you believe the level is normalcy, right? And so that's what's hard. That's what takes time. So I'm just not seeing, now I am not in the skiffs anymore. But I know for a fact, if we were running around dazzling people with our capabilities with AI, it would be readily available to explain that that's what's working for us. Now, bad guys can use it to attack for sure. Good guys can use it to defend for sure. But at the same time, there is still a level of human in the loop that has to be managed, and there's still a level of where is the attack surface of this particular system? How do I manage that? How do I make sure who has access to it? Things like that. So to me, AI is still, it is coming. You're hearing and you're seeing Amazon and others laying off people because AI is taking jobs away, which remember they said it would not do.
Right.
However, comma, when things are all about the bottom line, it does. So routine functions can be accomplished by AI. We're probably getting into the next level and the next level of complexity functions that can be accomplished by it. But you still, as the ISSO or the CISO, have to have confidence that that is what you're getting what you expected. And my opinion, after talking to some of the friends that I know, we're there on some fronts, and other fronts we're not.
You talked about the way it sounded to me that you described it earlier in our conversation, Rob, is that there's a cost-benefit ratio to cyber and the detail to which one goes to get the last risk ameliorated. Is it your sense that that is how the department is looking at it now, or is the department looking at it the way my sense is that they have for a long time, which is we have to absolutely lock down everything and we have to make sure that there's no penetration at all? That's the goal that we aspire to. Maybe people understand that's not a realistic goal to actually achieve, but it's a stretch goal. Is that still the way that you think people view it, or is maybe my impression of it all along been not accurate?
No, I think that's what my observation is. That's exactly the case, is that the unclassified systems and then the classified systems, it is about how much you're willing to spend on them, right? And then also the criticality of the data handled by that system, right? So I can remember when, and remember, so many systems are intertwined. Bad guys can jump from one to another and make their way towards the goal that they want. And which is why when you talk about what is CMMC doing, once it gets into contracts, I actually think that's a good thing to do, because industry invests in cybersecurity as little as they can, right? It comes out of profit. So they don't want to overspend. They want to spend the right amount. They want to protect the information. Now, the question is, if you implement CMMC and you know the kind of data that you have, where's the right level of investment, right? And then how you maintain that investment, right? I mean, so the price for implementing this, we want to secure everything, is rather astronomical. So now the question is, should you invest in protections? Should you look at the problem differently? If you look at the classified networks, right, there's a level of encryption that runs in the background that makes that particularly a harder shell to crack from the get-go. And then in the inside, there's other things that go on as well. So the question is that investment necessary for the unclassified systems? I'm not saying it is or isn't. I'm just saying you got to look at that and decide, do I want to spend that? Because do I want to make it, how hard do I want to make it for an adversary to get in the system? And what does it cost them to get in, right? I mean, this is a game of energy. Mm-hmm. And right now, the number of systems has to be probably rounded up. Reduced, and then protecting those in a way that you're comfortable that sets the appropriate level of protections.
It strikes me the challenge too is that it's certainly not practical, I don't think. And I imagine it might not even be possible to establish like a cost-benefit matrix. It's got to be, you have to eyeball each individual system or each individual group of data that you want to secure and determine what's the right number that makes sense to secure this to what level. There's a lot of variables there that dictate what that equation looks like. Is that a fair read on my part, Rob?
Absolutely. That's why, again, this is complex. This is not a simple perform to this level, right? Because now if you consider the data that's involved, you consider the people who have access to that system, where they have access to it. I mean, suddenly this is a network of protection that has to, be pretty smart. It has to know when something's wrong. And bad actors leave no footprints in the snow. So you wouldn't know anything's wrong necessarily. And again, back to CMMC and industry, you wouldn't know that they took your stuff, right? But we know from the last 10 years that if you had anything of value, it's likely been absconded with by one of the nation state threat actors. Okay, now what do we do, right? So to me, the investments have not kept up with the ability to say it's protected. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes perfect sense. We'll leave the complexity of the cyber landscape there for now and come back to that hopefully at a later date, Rob, because I want to ask you, Leo Garciga, the CIO of the Army, was on FedGov Today TV back in the summer, and he talked about the next generation of the JWCC contract to DISA and said that his team is working with DISA to formulate the next generation. In your view, as a practitioner and as an expert on cloud, what does the next generation of JWCC look like? What does it do for the warfighter that maybe the first generation doesn't do now? And what does it do for the industry partners who provide those services to the department to help them provide those services better, cheaper, faster, et cetera?
So I mean, JWCC was an awesome opportunity to provide a platform that everyone could use, a coherent platform that everyone could go buy these cloud computing services and the associated, back to what we were just talking about, protections, right? So now, as we move into the next level, you think to yourself going, okay, I have to enable warfighter connectivity probably at a level I didn't have before that is secure. Okay, now we're back to cyber again. So a consistent application of both the compute store capability, which then we believe is necessary for hosting AI type activities, right? And then enabling rapid decision-making with real-time information on the battlefield, right? The goals have been the same goals for a long time. How do I enable, down to the company level, certainly the battalion level on the battlefield, or a wing level or squadron level, in the air? How do I enable them with real-time information such that the commanders can make decisions, right? So the cloud provides that capability, but it has to provide it securely, right? There's no magic to where are those servers housed, and then what's protecting them? What's the path in and the path out? So I think, there's a lot of goodness in the first one. There are going to be requirements that have matured that will elevate the needs, and hopefully the warfighters like, yeah, that's what I want, right? And as they move into the future, provide again a cost-benefit analysis that makes sense to go buy your compute store requirements from that contract, right?
Those requirements that have matured are where I wanted to go next, because the first JWCC was let in 2022, so that's almost 4 years. It'll be 4 years ago by the time they get the contract on the street. Just about nobody was talking about artificial intelligence publicly in 2022. So that's one factor. What are the other requirements that have matured in that time period that the team that puts this contract together will want to be thinking about?
Well, latency of information, right? So if you are in Southwest Asia conducting covert operations, are you going to use the cloud? I would hope that you had the ability to do that, right? And then is that the super highway for you to query information to then make decisions? So I think the requirements, again, they've all been there. We've not actually executed them as well as we could have. When there is a ship steaming in the Western Pacific, can they query the cloud to get information that they might need, and then obviously share it? So I think, I'm not involved in the requirement setting, but I can imagine what it is. And then the question is going to be, okay, how long after we set the requirements does the contract manifest itself, right? If you remember the first version of this contract, we started the requirements setting in 2016. 4 years later, 5 years later, they started to take a different shape because we learned what we really wanted, and now we're in the same boat. So the question is, we can't take years and years and years to let a contract to buy future-looking technology, right? That's what's really hard, because you're buying what's in the contract. You're not buying what you think you want now. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean, and that's the reason I call on you all the time to join me, Rob. It's great to talk to you again, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis.
You can read more about JWCC 2.0 and find a link to the conversation with Army CIO Lionel Garcia that I mentioned on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. The FedGov Today podcast is back tomorrow. Fortune 100 companies are starting to adopt the FedRAMP standard for their internal cybersecurity. You'll learn why and how government can benefit on tomorrow's FedGov Today podcast. If you don't want to miss that, you can follow the FedGov Today podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, on the FedGov Today YouTube channel, or on demand at fedgovtoday.com. I'm Francis Rose. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks for listening.